All right, we're going to get started. Just want to say good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. Welcome. My name is Mary Beth Gassman, and I am the moderator for today. I am a professor at Rutgers University, and I also have the honor of serving as the director for the Rutgers Center for Minority Serving Institutions, which is one of the sponsors of today's webinar, along with the Citizens Campaign. Just to tell you a little bit about the event, it's called Training Citizen Leaders at Minority Serving Institutions, Building Power Beyond the Ballot. And just to give you a little context, as most of you hopefully know, MSIs have a mission to empower their students, not only as thinkers and workers, but as citizen leaders who engage in public life beyond the ballot. MSIs play a crucial role in providing adult civic skills training that prepare people to use their power as citizens to make their communities stronger. And so with this session, MSI faculty and administrators are going to have the opportunity to get a glimpse into leadership and no blame problem solving training and hear about opportunities to bring these trainings to your institution through undergraduate curriculum, continuing education, professional development, and other programs. So I'm really excited about today because we have an amazing panel, and I'm just going to introduce them briefly. We have Pamela Scott Johnson, who is the provost at Spelman College. We have Tanya Amankwatia, who is the assistant vice provost of distance education and extended learning at North Carolina A&T University. We have Diane Hill, who's the assistant chancellor of university community partnerships at Rutgers Newark. And we have Harry Pazicki, who is the founder and chairman of the Citizens Campaign, and wanted folks to know that he has an honorary doctorate from Monmouth University in civic innovation, which is really great, and a university in New Jersey. So I am going to, the way that we're going to do this today is that I'm going to hand it over to Harry, and he is going to give you a little bit of background. Then we're going to do a Q&A with the panel. And we're going to talk to you about some resources, and then we're going to open it up for questions from the audience. So I do want you to know that there's a Q&A on the webinar portal, and you can put all your questions in the Q&A. We will have a time at the end that we're going to go over those questions. Okay, so Harry, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you very much, Mary Beth, and I'd like to extend my thanks as well to my fellow panelists and to those listening today. For the opportunity to present our citizen-driven national public service, which trains citizens in their beyond the ballot power. Now, what that means in a nutshell is in the 21st century, new laws that give citizens access to their town's policies, often just virtually or through the internet, and give them the opportunity to present solutions, have given a new status to citizens that most aren't aware of. And technology has turbocharged that, giving the ability to find evidence-based solutions in other communities that might be imported into your own city, and the ability to share those solutions across the country for even more impact. So what happened? How did we get to this? It might give a little context and be helpful. I came from an economically challenged background and got lucky and got to go to college first in my family. And when I was at college, I decided to work off my privilege a bit by teaching reading at the local reform school. And I engaged with the superintendent in developing a program that showed great promise to reduce recidivism. So he took me to the state legislature. Now, I was a religious studies major, I had no political background or connections. No one in my family had political connections, but we listened to the state legislators review the program and then say, well, we don't have enough money to even send our kids to the ball game. Why should we fund this program? And I came back home and told my wife-to-be that this was insane because there would be so much savings and reduce incarceration and parole costs, and why couldn't they see that? And she started laughing at me. She had a background in politics and government and said, look, if you think a common sense solution is going to self-effect, you're going to have to learn some things. You're going to have to learn law and politics and government. So I switched careers, left the religious studies major, went to law school, not to learn how to be a lawyer, but to learn how to develop fair and common sense policy into law and get it adopted. And I also worked as a top staffer for Senator Bill Bradley when he first came up. So I learned a little politics there. And I served in a number of government positions and had this knowledge that needed to be shared with people. So we started in my wife's church, New Hope Baptist basement, to do some training. And it went on from there to several other Baptist churches. I don't know if any of you know of Reverend Buster Soaries, but First Baptist of Lincoln Gardens, and then Bethany Baptist in Newark, and so on. And we realized we had something, but we had to make it more accessible and more substantial. And so we formed a nonprofit, got lucky in the beginning, and Derek Bach, who had just retired as president of Harvard, came onto our board. And using his big, credible name, we were able to put together a team of 50 practitioners with exceptional records for success in getting laws adopted at the local level, usually in urban communities, school board, mayor and council, could be planning board, whatever, but they had good records. And we put together what we call a program in no blame, pragmatic problem solving. The no blame is from Dr. King. The policy of non-violence was what he used to be able to keep the focus on the solution. And if you're going to push solutions that bring about change in society, you need to keep the focus on them. So we take a no blame approach. The pragmatic side has three aspects, three criteria. The solutions have to be based on evidence of success in a similar city. So we're really teaching people to steal good ideas that are working in cities similar to their own and import them. They have to be budget neutral or better. That's the second criterion. So you're not going to get into a tax and spend problem. And by the way, most municipal governments that I know can't print money, so it's a good way to go. And finally, and last but not least, because we're teaching public service, we want the solution to benefit the community as a whole, not just be special interest. So let me just give you an example of one solution, and then I'll turn it back to Mary Beth. One of our trainees, Samantha Castro, led a protest of 1,000 people when George Floyd occurred. And she wanted to bring attention to the warrior culture of the police department of the city that she lived in. She then came to us, actually went to the NAACP, and the president was one of our trustees and sent her over to us. And she learned the no blame pragmatic problem solving. She found a study that showed that nationally police officers receive 8 hours of force training for every 1 hour of de-escalation training. And the study showed that increased de-escalation training would not only virtually eliminate excessive use of force, but it would reduce police injuries by 36% as well. And it would save the city money because there's less use of force lawsuits to eat up the money with damages and settlements and so on. Samantha now has become chair of her own city's police advisory board, and she's developed a measuring technique to measure the progress toward a guardian culture and increased de-escalation that she's now working on with the Yale Center for Policing to promulgate among urban police departments across the country. So that's the idea. There's more power in no blame problem solving beyond the ballot than most people realize, and ballot power is important, but it's not enough. So I'll end there. I'll tell you about some of the options for using our tools at the end of this, but I'll turn it back to Mary Beth at this point, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for giving that history too. I think it's really important for people to understand the context and history of this type of training. So I'm really excited to ask the panel questions. So the first question that I have for our amazing panel is what would you say is special or distinctive about the role of MSIs in civic leadership development and closing the civic empowerment gap today? And Diane, I would love to start with you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you. I'm delighted to be a part of this panel with these esteemed colleagues. So thank you, and had the opportunity to meet Harry a long time ago, and thank you, Harry, for getting us involved in this. And I think that when I think about this distinct and as you would call it, special civic leadership development and what it is, I think about when I look at his book, and on the cover of the book, there is a quote from a gentleman who Thomas Kane Sr. And I bring that to light because Thomas Kane Sr., who was a former governor, was the sponsor, the original sponsor of the Educational Opportunity Fund program in the great state of New Jersey. And I think about EOF because EOF is also a foundation for having students to understand their role in government, period. Their role. If it wasn't for understanding this process, there may not even be an EOF program. Understanding how you go about working with different leaders and stakeholders at multiple levels, whether it is part of legislation, whether it is your local community. So what is wonderful about this process and this project, the way it is built in the state, it has multiple antennas that it can go into in different places and spaces. But most of all, it's important for students, if you want to make a difference and you want to make a change, and it allows you an opportunity to get into the room. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little later, about not just getting in the room, but what you do when you're there.
No, I like that. Thank you. Thank you. Pamela.
So, first of all, thank you again for this opportunity. And I've just really kind of jumped in because the concept is really great. So I'll start with two things. One is, if you look at the tagline of Spelman, it is a choice to change the world. And the mission of Spelman has always been about women who lead and women who serve. When you think about the landscape of HBCUs and the fact that you have judges and teachers and lawyers and principals and corporate workers, when you think about the structure, it's not only at the ballot box and beyond the ballot. It is a commitment to ensuring that there is inclusiveness in a tangible way, in the ways that we develop and design deliberately the curriculum around excellence, which is about deliberateness. And I've also had an opportunity to work at Hispanic serving institutions. When you think about the anchor institution and the economic impact, that impact has to have some tangible structures for which people engage in making differences. And so the core of the educational experiences are about transforming the environment. Because if education is about transforming environments and passports to new futures, and these communities have been underserved and we see underrepresentation, then you got to put it in the mix. And so the unique role in the founding of HBCUs has been about service, has been about inclusion, has been about engagement. And minority serving institutions, which really has come about in terms of numbers, but the commitment to serve and impact and transform those communities have been clearly articulated. And that's what makes this opportunity to go beyond the ballot box, to go beyond the marches, but to really ensure structural changes are necessary, needed, and we are now in a time of urgency.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm getting excited about all of those good things. So thank you, Pamela. Tanya, what about you?
I'd like to also say thank you, and I am very proud to be representing North Carolina A&T's extended campus. And the extended campus is comprised of A&T Online and continuing education. So that lifelong learning mission is especially appropriate and aligned with this conversation. So again, thank you, everybody. But the role in this type of leadership development and civic engagement, to me, is particularly special and distinctive simply due to the authenticity that we bring to the table. So we offer a unique perspective that stems from a genuine understanding of the community issues, and the lived experiences of the people we serve. And that authenticity is a catalyst for building trust and connecting with individuals and fostering civic empowerment. And that is a powerful tool, that authenticity, again, because it inspires engagement and leadership, because people know they can trust the narratives that reflect their own journeys and struggles, and it fosters a deeper sense of belonging and shared purpose.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that too. You know, over the years, I've done, at this point, thousands of interviews with, in particular, HBCU students. And one of the things that I always love that I hear from HBCU students is they'll say, you know, I think they actually care about me more here than I even care about myself. You know, so when you said authenticity, I think that just really rings through. And so thank you for saying that. Harry, I wanted to see if you wanted to comment at all on this particular question.
And what is the question?
Oh, the question I had asked about just the special or distinctive role of MSIs in civic leadership and closing the civic empowerment gap. I wasn't sure if you wanted to make a comment about that.
I will make just a brief comment. I do think, at least from my own experience, that economically challenged students, particularly minority students, often live under an expectation ceiling, not thinking of themselves as potential leaders in their own communities, but feeling powerless. And I think the training in Beyond the Ballot Power has the ability not only to change a lot of the social policies affecting the community, but also raising that expectation ceiling. Our metrics test civic self-image and civic connectedness to community. And I think that's what's necessary if we're going to really see ourselves as leaders going forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So Tanya, I have a question specifically for you, and that is, can you give an example of a student from your institution's history who exercised civil service and leadership in local government beyond the ballot, and how will these kinds of civic skills trainings help more students to do that?
Absolutely. But I'll tell you, picking just one example is a challenge, because you have such a rich history of civic engagement here at North Carolina A&T. Reverend Jesse Jackson, Congresswoman Alma Adams, but an historical example, and it sounds like you wanted something maybe when they were in the student role. So I'll say the Greensboro Four, but that's still not just one. There are four. And whether it's Jabril, Kazan, David Richmond, I'll just say their names in case people don't have them. Franklin, McCain, and then Joseph McNeil. So those students exemplified civic service and leadership at that time beyond the ballot, because they initiated that nonviolent protest. And I think all of us are familiar with that Woolworth counter, but they used their voices and actions. And I think that's particularly aligned, and it created tangible ripple effects throughout the country. So as students, they encouraged other students, and they changed their local community, and that of course spread throughout the nation. So how can we incorporate some of those lessons we have been at North Carolina A&T and civic skills training? Absolutely can do that. Help students understand the power of collective action, of course, effective communications, and strategic planning.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad that you brought up the A&T 4, and I was born on February 1st, the day that happened, 8 years later, but I always am so proud that, you know, like in history, that I was born on that day. So thank you. And Diane, I'm wondering if you can give an example of a student from your classes, perhaps, who went on to exercise civic service or leadership in local government, of course, beyond the ballot, right? And then also, how will civic skills training help more students to do that from your perspective?
Yeah, see, as an anchor institution in the city of Newark, I think it's important that when we first bring our students and having them there, they're automatically getting involved and getting exposed into being change agents, that they will and can and should be making a difference. One of the ways of doing that was that we developed a course, Building Bridges to the Community, and we incorporated this model of the citizen and the whole citizen manual piece into as part of that course, so that it becomes hands-on for the students, that they're actually learning and doing. But then it was something else that was very, very important, that you have to give them some real practical experience. And the practical experience isn't just working and being in an organization, it is being a part of it in a way that they've never had an opportunity to do that. That being key, working with key stakeholders and legislators to understand what change needs to happen in my community and how that happens. And this provided a gateway, an open door for that to happen, access for that to happen, access to understand policies for the solutions. Because if you have to be at the table, you have to get in the room, you have to then, as our former Lieutenant Governor Oliver would say, that you have to be there at the table. Once you get in the room, then you have to understand that you have to show up and you have to stand up and speak up. And that's what this teaches those students to do. It teaches them to come into a room, be comfortable with understanding that I am a change agent and I can understand how to do that at multiple levels. Whether it is the local government and I'm on a municipal board and I get exposed to planning boards and what's coming into my community, whether it is the education board and I need to change the trajectory of what's going on with the kids in my community because I want to do something different, or whether it is at the top with what we've done most recently is incorporated into with the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus Foundation internship program, because those interns are expected to understand policy, know how to get in the door and get there, and know how to shape it and make it a difference and make changes in their own towns, cities, but also when they go outside of that at their universities, which some of them are the historical Black college universities, and some of them are within the state of New Jersey. So I think that it is about, understanding the process, getting to know the process, but being a part of the process and change, which is going to make them later on get more involved in different ways as change agents.
Thank you. I appreciate the enthusiasm too. I think it's great for people to hear all that, especially because with working close with students, so important. So,
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say one thing to you that I thought was important in the class. One of the students that was in the class, and this was unique, he wanted to design for his neighborhood a cultural model of engagement, because he said every culture at the grassroots level don't engage the same way. And I never even thought of that. I never even thought of it. He said, if you come over here to my community, this is not the way that we would see this. So I think that through this process, they're learning and teaching us too. Because for me, that was a great eye opener, because I go in, get on a board, get to know, get to show. And his position was, nope, we shouldn't do it that way, Dr. Hill, because in my community, you have to get to know the people different. And I have to bring you in as a friend in a different way for them to even want to do this or want to address it. So I just wanted to bring that to light.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for adding that in. I think it's always so amazing what we learn from students as well, right? Amazing. So, Pamela, since you're a psychologist by training, I'm wondering how training in leadership and no blame problem solving can help to promote students' self-efficacy and also professional development. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. So I love the fact that Diane talked about the internships, the externships being part of legislative policy making practices. all of that gives you, that strengthens your muscles, right? It's sort of like when you're exercising. I was in the pool last night and I realized, in not having been in the pool in 2 weeks, that my capacity for swimming a long time has been compromised. So that efficacy says a couple of things. I can do this. I will do this. I understand how to do this. And even if I make a mistake, I can get back on. That's also professional development. I'll never forget, it's part of the Spelman educational process, political science, but also in other areas. Though that going to the legislature to share and to know and to meet people that have either been in your institution. Tanya talked a little bit about that when she talked about that as well. And I know my other experiences, being a part of an internship that gives you your entryway, being part of city council conversations, being part of that allows you to not only tap muscles that you didn't know that you had, but also strengthen muscles that you have. That professional development includes a lot of things that are built into our curriculum, but that are going to be needed for nuances. Harry talked about Samantha and understanding the kind of mosaic of the police and how many hours. That data analytics and that way in which cities have information, you must know how to research it, how to use the analysis for it, to bring that to the boards, to be evidence oriented, not driven, not data driven, but to be oriented. Because as Diane said, and I think Harry mentioned earlier, you have to have a cultural context that you just can't show up and expect people to not only listen to you, but to hear you. And you've also got to be willing to bridge the gap of the other side and to understand other people's perspectives, even if you think they're like you. And that's why this is so important. And then efficacy also, one of the other things, just in being a psychologist, and Harry and I talked about this, there's so much trauma now, and we need that kind of efficacy. When our communities have been traumatized, the kind of cognitive and physiological impact on the body shuts people down. So that efficacy is not only about reigniting, but it is helping us understand that we can, and we don't need to be deer in the headlights. We don't need to, kind of be immobilized by the daily barrage of trauma in our communities. That creates a distal opportunity for us to engage. And what we do in our classrooms is to remind people that barrage of trauma, we're going to change your perspective and your own sense of how you build a fence around what you hear, what you do, because being in action will begin to break those bonds, break those chains, give you a new cognitive framework for engaging. And that's really going to be critical. And that's beyond just getting to the ballot. That's staying on the court, if you will.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. So at this point, what we're going to do is, Harry, I'm going to pass the baton back over to you to talk a little bit about how institutions can use tools to do this kind of work. And then once you do that, we're going to open it up for questions. I already have some questions that have come in, but please put your questions in the Q&A. And if you need me to direct the question to a specific person, please just let us know. So Harry, if you can tell us a little bit about the tools, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beth. And I'm getting more motivated listening to our panelists. It's helping me along as well. Here, quickly, first of all, we got the Citizen Power Manual published by Rutgers University Press. The key here is this is not beach reading. This is your owner's manual if you want to own your government, especially at the municipal level. Shows you where the playing fields of decision-making are, where the equipment is that you need to research solutions, the basic plays on the field. This is how to get in the game. All of this is available to MSIs and HBCUs for free. So that's our mission. I'm a volunteer. We're almost all of us are volunteers at our group. In addition to the leadership training manual, there's an automated course, very, very important, put together by our curriculum director. It takes attendance, quiz scores, and it issues a certificate of training in leadership and no blame problem. Rutgers had led the way on that. And it has 10 5-minute videos, each one of them connected to a chapter in the book, self-paced, very easy to use, and can be incorporated in courses as a homework assignment or right in the center of the course to guide a project-centered education. Many uses for it. We can go into it another time. There's an educational portal. It has a national sharing platform. It has access to people who train to take 5 non-elected leadership roles in their own community, which we facilitate. And it has support from the 50 members of our Law and Policy Task Force. The last thing to tell you is, if you're going to start at your university, get it on your continuing ed site, because that gives multiple uses. Professors can use it. It can be used for the employees. Rutgers is now going to do it with all 22,000 employees. So they're creating a culture of service and problem solving on the campus. And now corporations are working with, in the anchor institution format that Diane referenced, to offer the course to their employees. So we can create a culture of service that will get us out of the divisiveness that we're in today.
Thank you. Thank you. And Harry, I really, really appreciate how enthusiastic you are as well. So, I mean, I think what I really liked is when everyone on the panel was talking, you could see just how excited you were. So, which is terrific. I did want to ask a question just real quickly. We've got a whole bunch of questions coming in. Please put more questions in the Q&A. This would be great. And I appreciate you directing them toward people. But one thing I wanted to just ask, and Tanya, you sort of nudged me on this, is there's the question of like who benefits, right? And can you elaborate a little bit about that? And maybe the panel, once you do, can talk a little bit more about it.
So sure, after Harry very enthusiastically shared the tools, I just thought there were so many people when we got introduced to this on campus that benefit from this program. And so right away, I talked about our post-traditional adult learners fraternity, because their mission is scholarship and leadership. And we already have an excellent office of leadership and civic engagement at North Carolina A&T. So that's the train the trainer, that's a student organization. And then our VIP, our virtual, it's our virtual pre-college program. It's a virtual immersion pre-college program. So I just thought that it would be neat to just hear really quickly some of the known student groups or faculty groups that could benefit from the tools Harry just shared. Those are ours at North Carolina A&T.
Great. And Pamela and Diana, do you want to say anything, contribute?
I think that with, and I'm going to take it from the perspective of this summer experience with the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus Foundation and the Legislative Black Caucus, which are all of the legislators in New Jersey that are part of that group. They've had the opportunity to hear and see this in action. And that's important, because that means that now they're interested in hosting and seeing places and spaces they can put it into their own districts. So that's happening right now and unfolding, and they're using the interns to help as build that foundation for some of them in different ways, in different forms, whether it is through a town group that they're putting together, or whether it is through their own individual colleges and universities they're going back to. But what was unique, that they allowed us to integrate this as part of the training. So every student had to go through this as part of their training this summer also, which means that we have an expectation that it is being used. And it is already, because I already know that some of the students are using it already and employing it. And some of the legislators have already invited it as part of the process, they want to hear more and see how they can implement it. I think that when I think about who is this good for, I could make a whole list of people because I think of not just the legislators, I think of the parents. Your parents, we all
Thank-
want
Yeah,
parents involved. Am I right, Harry? We want to get
absolutely.
involved. How you get them involved in boards and other places and spaces is to give them confidence and educate them on the process and allow them so they have access to this because the city of Newark also has this as part of their mission. So the mayor has embraced it. So now you have the parents who are interested. How can I best serve my child in different ways? And what access, what boards and what things do I need to be on to do that? When I think about students, and then I think about youth, I think about the high school students that we're getting ready for this, that they too should be a part of having a voice on some of these committees and things to empower. If you're talking about me, let me be part of telling you what some of the solutions might be. So having them involved. But then there's another group coming up behind you that I wasn't even looking for that is interested in this. And that's our senior population. Now that's who vote the most. Now you need to understand it. So it's not about voting for them right now because they're going to get on the bus, they're going to vote. But it is about them feeling that they can and will continue to make changes in their own community. So how can I be a part when I learn about this and I do this program and I can go in here and do this? It makes it more attractive for them also to want to participate on different levels of government in different places that they had never even thought about before. So I think there's so many connections and so many places, and it really is making a difference. And when you get the buy-in at the city level, and then you get it at the university and the school level, it's a win-win situation of having almost like a whirlwind of people that are being prepared. And what we have to do is be prepared to find places to have them, to have that voice. We have to find those spaces and places to make sure they can get in on that and do that. And we're doing some of that at Rutgers by being strategic about involving them on different advisory boards and different panels in different places, even at the university level.
Thank you. Thank you. Pamela, what about you?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is, so first of all, this is moving from New Jersey south, from Jersey down to North Carolina, and I'm just stepping my foot into Georgia. However, I know that we have on our campus Social Justice Institute. We have a number of institutes, but this framework is something that I'm beginning to share with our colleagues on our campus. We always have been engaged in the society and engaged in government. But here are a couple of things that occurred to me in this conversation. We think of government broadly, but when you're committed to the environment, how do you make changes in the environment? You know, we had the water crisis in Mississippi. Students and citizens at every level are going to have to be attracted to how to get in at the, not at the higher levels, but at the local level. When you think about trash dumps in the back of certain yards versus other yards, you have to be involved in that. I had a classmate who wanted to be the EPA director, Lisa Jackson, who was Lisa Perez when she was my classmate at Princeton, said, you know, I want to run the EPA. She came out of Louisiana. And just the work that she's done, because she wanted to look at the toxicity of the water and the toxic mess that was happening, you know, in Louisiana. And when you want to think about childcare, how do you find solutions that are tangible and at your front door? You know, in California, I had a student that used a simple GIS project to look at the greenage and the foliage in Los Angeles, where there were certain areas that were flush with green trees, like a Pasadena, and other areas that had no vegetation. So this process in the hands of students, in the hands of citizens, in the hands of, and I love how you said, Diane, what about the senior citizens? Hey, we don't have to worry about them voting. but we've lost where to make the connections because it's so big. And sometimes our minds are just like, I don't even know where to get involved. You know, that old saying, you can't fight City Hall. We're not asking you to fight City Hall. We're asking you to lay the bricks one by one, two by two, because that is what the building is made of. It doesn't start out as a whole building. It starts off by a single brick of interest and engagement. That's what we give our students. That's what we give our citizens. And we have put barriers up. This gives us the opportunity to tear those barriers down, to not have us be, you know, cognitively drained and traumatized by what is happening, and have the information. But the skill set is what the college environment provides. And we have to come from our gowns to the town to make a difference for our community. And Tanya put that in. We have always been indelibly connected to our communities because that's our lived experience over many of those levels. And that's what this allows us to do in a very simple, concrete, tangible way, that we are clear about what the outcomes are, because we're not looking in the distance for what they are. We're looking in our local apparatus, if you will.
All right, thank you, everyone. So we're gonna take lots and lots of questions. Gonna take some of these. The first one is, and this is just for the panel overall, so just give me a hand if you want to answer, okay? And that is, what are the panelists' perspectives on the state of conditions in Black areas of influence communities today versus pre-civil rights era, and maybe provide a comparison? I'm wondering, anyone want to take a shot at answering that question?
You know, when I think about that, Mary Beth, and whoever's shaping that, I think that we always still have work to do. There is always the opportunity to take it to the next level and have a better understanding. You know, I think that we can't stay where we were and be where we're at. Each moment is an opportunity to walk through a door and get somebody else in, and to be able to pull different people up in different ways. And I think that that's what this does. When I look at where we were and where we could be, I think about my mother who came to Newark, New Jersey in the 30s, and talk about that issue and say, you know, this is where we were and this is why we came and why we left the South and how we had to, or because of whatever. But then I also think about how she became a district leader and got involved to help to get other people involved and say, this is what is wrong with our community, and open up those doors for others. So where are we at today? We are now at a place where we need to get through those doors, get our students through those doors, get our parents through those doors, get them to understand that they have a job to do, and understanding and using this curriculum is an eye-opener for many of them. It allows them to not stand still in a historical space and place. It allows them to think that they can, and understand that if they get to know, they can be. Just like that little girl from Newark, New Jersey, who became lieutenant governor, that they could do it, and they will do it, and they should be in other places and spaces and throughout the state. And for me, it's not just local government. There are, I don't know how many boards, Harry, with the state of New Jersey and in all these other states that they have, that nobody even knows or get access to.
Thank you.
When I go to the Wealth Disparity Task Force, I like to look to my left and right and see a student or two on those boards that they have input to. I like to see the person who was an EOF student, Educational Opportunity Fund, didn't have the money to go, but I'm here, and I'm making a difference with the whole state of New Jersey to not just tell my story, but I'm here because somebody opened up a door and allowed me to go through.
And I agree with
I love how Diane started off with, there's work to be done. There are doors that have been opened by men and women from all of our institutions and our states. And you look at the state of affairs where there's not only work to be done, but there's a vigilance to be kept in the work that has been done. This generation of young people are going to create new ways. I mean, I just think about all of the work around technology, you know, books that have come out, The Algorithm of Oppression, the weapons of mass destruction. These are areas that we have never thought about that are going to impact and influence what we do and how we do it. So while there have been doors open, those open doors seem to be shifting in some ways. And this generation is more poised to work with that shift so those of us in the previous generation can keep our end of the doors open while this generation shifts those appendages and those openings so that it can be widened and so that we can come together. I mean, what makes this really exciting is the inclusiveness. We talk about inclusiveness. There's doing inclusiveness, but there's being inclusive. So those conversations have made us shift from a religious standpoint, a gender standpoint. It's allowed us to put not only the narratives in, but those narratives open up doors. And I have to tell you, we are not going backwards. And so we have to find the most creative ways, the ways in which our technologies, and I don't mean just the equipment, but the ways in which we think about those entry points. This generation will be creating ways, but they've got to have that cultural context, not as a way to tie them down or back, but as a way to help them not reinvent the wheel, but to say, maybe we don't need wheels at all. Maybe the ways in which we've transported ourselves don't exist at all. You know, I'm a Trekkian, so right? So you go from flying to warp speed to dematerializing. This generation is likely to do it. And there's work to be done because the human condition, the core of that, has not improved. And so all those ways, I mean, I think about my own Spelman sister who started as Stacey Abrams, who was student government president, who went into the legislature and who, you know, is running for governor. And, you know, the women at Spelman, we say, you know, it's just a matter of time. But think about all those other people tangibly. But government isn't monolithic. That's why I keep bringing these individual ideas, because I want people to be thinking about what does the scientific endeavor look like in biology and psychology and economics. But in everything that we do, there are policies that shape who can participate, when they can participate, how they can participate. And I want them to be thinking about what are the steps and not get overwhelmed by the whole, but say, maybe I'll take one piece at a time. And that's really as critical as anything else, seeing that you can.
Wow. Thank you. Tanya, I know you wanted to talk too. What would you want to say?
I was just going to say yes and amen to what Diane said, and then Pamela put the icing on the cake. I was thinking about that contrast, you know, the pre-civil rights era. And yes, there's work to be done, but I have to tell you, when I got to Greensboro and started traveling around the Triad area, and I saw the immense just flourishing of in my case a lot of Black excellence, you know, driving the Teslas and in various leadership roles all over. It was just an eye-opening and a chance to take a deep cleansing breath. The work's not done, but some of the limited access to education and resources pre-civil rights, there has absolutely been an impact by our HBCUs and other institutions, particularly here in North Carolina, that it was visible as soon as I got here, that there is progress happening in the legal system, you know, pre-civil rights. And today, big changes, still work to be done. So I'm encouraged by the people and the stories that are all around us, that there is a visible contrast that I can make in my lifetime. And we'll keep working at it, because that's what Aggies do, and that's what all of us here who are committed to civic engagement will absolutely do.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I love this question, and it is, what issue is a subject of debate in your community right now that could be addressed with the no blame problem solving? So whoever wants to go first, let me know what you think. Do you have an issue in your community right now that could be addressed with this sort of approach? If you want to go first, just go like this. Oh, Harry wants to talk, and then
I know it's not my ideas. We have so many graduates of our programs that are dealing with issues in their community. I'll just give you a couple of them. One is, you know, the COVID impact on our public education system, especially the younger students and the reading deficiencies that are coming from that. That is an issue right now that's hitting many urban areas, many communities generally. Some of the research that our grads are already doing on that have looked at a program, believe it or not, in Mississippi called the Third Grade Gate. And it's creating, with virtually no additional expenditures, huge increases in reading proficiency and so on. So if you look for solutions like that that are out there and bring them to your community, you'll at least change the focus of the discussion from complaint to solution. And you may find some evidence-based solutions that will really produce results. The people who have taken our training already during the pilot stages have passed over 300 local laws with an over 90% success rate. You know, so there's so much going. Right now, you're starting to get AI-driven surveillance in police departments. How far does that go? How does it work for the community instead of against the community? These things can be researched. They are experiments. They can be applied. One of the things that's happening right now in terms of climate change and just the economic inequality is there's more and more stress on tenants than there ever has been, evictions, et cetera. There's a model in Philadelphia right now that calls for a 30-day mediation before someone can actually go into court to seek the eviction. It's helping the tenants and it's helping the landlords, because you know as well as I, a lot of people, just one traffic ticket or one medical bill will put them on the verge of eviction, and it can be worked out in a month with the mediation. I'll stop there, but I'm just saying there's so many things that can be addressed as long as you have the beyond the ballot knowledge of how to do so.
Thank you, Harry. Diane, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with what Harry is saying, but I just want to say in New Jersey, I think there's a series of issues that are being addressed, and this type of process can help with people understanding how to get involved in it. And for example, COVID brought out health inequality, okay?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
in areas that you need to address health in a different way. And it was not being addressed there. So I think that that's a big issue. It came out in COVID, but it was already there. It just lightened, you know, the light was shed on it a little more. But then hand in hand with that was food insecurity. Okay, how can people, are they eating? Can they eat? So during that time, you know, that was a big thrust for that, and still is, you know, for who's eating and where they're eating and what they're eating. I think there is a new one that's coming out, and it's not new, it's old, but how it's being addressed. Because of when you look at policing and all of that, there is a lot of my friends and colleagues and people in the community that are doing work, and they call it youth empowerment, strengthening families and employment, life restart services for pre and post incarcerated women and youth. And that's important because people are coming home, and you need to address how they're coming home and what they need to be and how they're going to be integrated back into the community. And that gets you to all the other issues that Harry mentioned, whether it is the housing issues, the health issues, the the food insecurity, all of that rolls right into that piece too. So when you think about it, you know, you could put this big circle, and in the middle you could say, so what is it? And you could put all of these different things around it, and include an environment too, because it's where you live. You know, and I'm not going to go into the details, but I will tell you this little girl stayed in the hospital for 3 years with asthma as part of the process, but it was not asthma was the end result of the environment that I was living in and not knowing it. So when I say about environment, we're talking about, yes, the windmills and the environment and what's going on now, but we also have to talk about the environment that our families and urban communities are living in and how they're living in those communities. And then I'm going to tell you the big one, because I know Dr. Scott is going to jump on this, Scott Johnson. It is trauma, mental health. And we have to get people in places and spaces where they understand how they can get that help. Because for years, people in urban communities didn't get it. For years, people didn't understand what it meant to get it. And it is critical, even more critical now that we start thinking how that happens and putting people strategically in places and spaces to help them to get educated so they're on boards and places to make these decisions about how the funding comes down, who should be doing it, how the licensing comes down, what's going on, how the people of color are in my community to render that support. So there's all different, I don't want to say, I think that you need that little windmill, Mary Beth, to say these are the main issues, because it's not one, but they all intersect with each other.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I like. Thank you for the handoff, Diane. This would be a great basketball game if we were. But yeah, there's so many. I mean, I love, and not just at Spelman, but the other institutions I've been involved in. When you talk about food insecurity, institutions partnering with local agencies to have food gardens and to distribute that to the most needy. To look at, and you mentioned, Harry, you and Diane mentioned COVID. If we didn't learn anything about food insecurities and what happens to young people and how important getting 2 meals a day, a little breakfast and a lunch for young people, for children in their brain development, to sit in a classroom where you're hungry and you provide that. I remember when I lived in Maryland, one of the things we used to do on what my church group did was to pack lunches for kids on Friday with spaghetti and apples, because of the food deserts. And you have public health folks studying food deserts where you have high density, high fat foods that will shorten your life. So these are areas just in that landscape alone. And just as you talked about that, Diane, I have a Spelman sister, but the American Psychological Association has been all over racialized trauma and how that racialized trauma impacts everything and how you approach stuff from a generalized way. And so then you think about the trauma that has occurred because of violence and incarceration. And I have colleagues that have been studying what happens. You give a formerly incarcerated person, here, go and follow this schedule. Well, your brain has been compromised, literally compromised. And so I have colleagues that have been putting that in place. How does that get down to the community where you can actually work with, and that colleague, Kim Gorgans, has been working with the legal system to really talk about how do you keep these people from going back into prison because you have some arbitrary check mark of this is what you need to do when you just got to get it together. Getting it together is a community venture, and then having our students map out where you can get services. So all of these things are really important. They're new issues, but they're issues that have not been solved. And they're issues about what kind of, not just getting help. When there's a gun shooting of our young people in the schools, if you live in a community where there are resources, you're going to have deployment. But as you said, Diane, in an urban area where somebody expects there to be that violence, where are your community psychologists? I've had some Spelman sisters who've been community psychologists that'll go into those schools and work with them. So we have opportunities to put the tangible policies. I love Harry, how you said you can measure the number of policies that have been changed by the simplicity of this work. If it's too complicated, you make it so that people don't get access to it. This is simple. And that's really what makes me excited about it, is the simplicity in the doing and the structure of it. And the complexity comes when you're making that change and when you're following up on that change and when you're tracking that change and you're looking at the efficacy of the change and the difference on the people that it's intended to support.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope everybody who is listening is as excited as our panel is here. So, because I think it's great. Another question that has come in, and I'm not sure if the panel feels comfortable answering this, but I'm just going to ask it and see, and you can let me know. And if not, I'll go to the next question. And that is, the language of citizenship itself can be really traumatizing to students who want to engage but have no pathway to citizenship. Do you have any suggestions for navigating that? It's an interesting question, so wondering if anyone wants to take it on.
It is, and I love talking about cultural humility and especially empathy when engagement. So just as a general framework, the empathy and sensitivity, knowing that students have different pathways to citizenship, and they're not all the same, you know, for legal citizenship. But in the context of what we're talking about, I would just use the broader terms that encompass what we're trying to understand and what we're trying to inspire. So things such as, you know, the civic engagement and belonging. So instead of focusing on legal citizenship, we emphasize the importance of active participation, community involvement, and making positive contributions. Because those are human things that people can do. And that's just the initial response. And hopefully I've gotten it. I think Harry might have something to say. I could see him.
No, I just want to second what you're saying, Tanya. We have a number of grads who are non-citizens. They work together. I told you we have 5 non-elected positions that we facilitate. One of them is civic trustee, where they meet together with citizens in the community and work together to accomplish goals. So you don't need to be a citizen to be able to exercise power. You just need to know the power beyond the ballot and be able to work together with citizens in your community to accomplish the goals that you share. So it does appeal to everyone and work for everyone. By the way, our materials are available in Spanish as well. I'd like to have them translated for everyone, but at least we have them that far.
What I love about this, about the question, you know, when we think about how we're being inclusive, right? So the question brings about an insight into inclusiveness, because there is a certain kind of legal ramification or definition embedded in the citizen. And Tanya started off so aptly: if you are an inhabitant of a particular town or city or area, then your citizenship is ensured through your inhabitants. And I know that I think of this, and I don't question my legality of this. So I appreciate the question and toward my own commitment of being inclusive, where I may not have thought about how to deliberately include someone in their articulation of how they engage. So I just want to just lift up and say thank you. And then just to augment what Harry is saying, it's designed around citizenship without legality embedded in the definition, but it helps us think about how we might call people to action.
Right. And I just want to piggyback off of that, because I think Tanya hit it. And I think that both of you, when you went back and said, you know, as a citizen or as a person, you know, who is traumatized regarding, part of it is because they don't understand the law. You know, as an immigrant, you don't understand something, then you're traumatized or you're hurt because I can't get through the system to understand it. This process, because we have a also at Rutgers, we have an immigration clinic. So it helps for students and law students that come around to study it and be together to understand, and this is the wrong word to use, but I use it, infiltrate the system. Understand how you get and you embed yourself in so you understand it. And again, then it's designed for you to make a change with it or for you to address it. And it's no longer putting you in a situation where you feel traumatized anymore because you're going to address it for the next one and you're going to address it for you and your family in a different way. Most of the time it is because you don't understand the law, you don't feel a sense of belonging, and you have to kind of this information will help to build it out for you and help you to have a better understanding of what you could do to make that change.
You know, I just want to add, if you got a second, that's so on point, Diane. One of the things that motivated me to get into this, my grandfather was a Hungarian immigrant, and my relatives during vacation times and holidays would talk about how they used to make my grandfather do the dirty thing. So I got to be 12 years old. I asked them, what's the dirty thing? And they said, well, you know, your grandfather didn't know what his rights were when he was here. So the local party had kind of adopted him. And when he'd like needed to get a driver's license, they didn't tell him, go down the corner, they'll show you how to fill out the form. They said, we'll take care of it for you, but you got to work with us. And come election day, they'd ask him to go around in the language of those days and pick up the rummies from the gin mills to vote the gravestones. And he was embarrassed and ashamed by that, but he was afraid that that was the only way he was going to have power and knowledge. So you're so right. If people understand what power they really do have, what their legal rights are, they're not going to be subject to that kind of abuse.
Thank you, Harry. Okay, so another question, and this is I kind of would like you to get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty of the no blame problem solving approach, and that is just kind of in terms of using that approach to tackle issues, what excites you the most about using this approach? And I'd love to hear from people about what excites them the most about using the approach. And you can talk about like technical kinds of things, or just like what is it that really sets this kind of approach apart?
Well, while people are thinking, I'll chime in one part. It's pragmatic and virtually non-ideological. So people can meet on the common ground of no blame. And instead of fighting over my idea versus your idea, which usually leads back to the frustration that they're feeling from powerlessness, they can start looking for a solution. As soon as the mind shifts, and I will tell you, Pamela will second me on this, from a focus on a problem to focusing on a solution, there's a healthy transformation that occurs. And it's, to me, very exciting when I see that switch turned on and I see people have their power. I'll say this last thing. We did training for 15 cities cohorts of young people, 15 to 20 years of age. And they're in a nice country setting and they don't want to listen to civics or anything. I asked them, how many of you think life is fair? And after I get the dagger eyes on that, we say, all right, we all agree life's not fair. We now have a choice. We're either going to be victims or we're going to be leaders. And they started to listen at that point, because that's when you shift the mind. And that's when the whole process of healthy community and healthy citizen begins.
Thank you, Harry.
Healthy communities and healthy citizens. I'm excited about this because of the lifelong learning and land grant mission of our unit and the university. We see so many different changes and conflicts in society, and it's great to have practical tools and strategies to help people on their journeys. We have the opportunity to engage in community education, and this is so good. We're in a time of change. Higher ed is in a time of change. Conflict is inevitable. when you're changing, because in order for something to change, someone has to change, as Gordon says. And so this excites me because it does give, like Harry says, you know, a basically ideologically free empowerment tool for us to fulfill our mission in the extended campus. And that's what I think is great.
Thank you. Diane?
Mayor,
Diane?
Is it okay? Tanya,
Yeah.
I wanted to agree with you that because what excites me is the practical tools too. Because one of the first things that I do, and whether it's faculty or students, and they want to work with community, I said the first thing I'll look at them and I said, well, don't go in with your Superman cape thinking you just gonna go in there and rescue and know everything. And part of what this does, it allows you to not have to wear it, to not think you know everything. It allows you to put your guard down a little bit. And so it excites me when I see people working collectively across the board in team building. And that's what this also helps you to do. That you're going to be on, you might have access to a board, you have different things and different ways that you can approach. There are different ways. It may be a march, it may be a board, it may be a committee. There are so many different levels that you can approach this, and working with different organizations, whether they're community-based organizations or just working toward a cause that you love. So it excites me because it's no one avenue, it's no one thing. It gives you so many choices, it's so diverse. It's a little bit of everything for everybody. So that's what really excites me about it. Like I said, the learning, and I say this all the time, it takes place from the womb to the tomb. So when I think about this, that's exactly what's going on. We're talking about maternal health, but at the end of this, we're talking about and addressing issues for our aging community.
And Pamela, did you have any comments?
No, I'm actually looking forward to seeing it in action and leading a group through it. I mean, I've been reading this and making sure that my communities can start. You know, Tanya actually mentioned the fact that sororities and fraternities, I mean, this is a great opportunity to be able to facilitate this at all levels. So I'm in a new environment. I got my team forming, and I'm looking forward to it. You know, in Atlanta, with, you know, this is the hub of activism.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you. I did want to note that I noted that one of our participants has a hand up. So if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A, because that's the way that we're taking questions. I guess the last thing that I wanted to ask before we kind of do a little bit of summary is that do you have any comments about folks from MSIs adopting this sort of approach, curriculum on their campuses with students? Any words of advice that you might have for people who are interested, who might want to? Harry, you mentioned that the book is available for MSI folks for free, and just any advice for kind of moving forward. And I'd love to hear from each of you on this. And you know what, Tanya, I'll start with you.
Great. We are new to this, so I'm glad to start because I can tell about our approach. We basically took this no blame problem solving as a partnership opportunity. So you look around the university, and for us, it was our Office for Community Engagement for people who are trying to solve similar problems. And you get on the same side of the issue and you share tools. And so that's where we started. And then it spread to some of the other areas that I talked about, the honors fraternity, the pre-college program. And then during our student success retreat, the Office of Leadership and Civic Engagement. And so that is what I would suggest. finding people who have a problem that can be solved and form partnerships and alliances. When you help other people get what they want, then you also get what you want. And for our unit, it is lifelong learning and continuing education. So we're happy to partner with anyone who helps us to bring education to our campus and our triad community.
I like that. Thanks. Who'd like to go next? Diane?
I think that I would say to all of my colleagues, especially where I'm at, and no matter what university they're at, that there's no cookie cutter model for this. That you have to look at your own university and your university structure to see where the best place and space is for this to be. For us, it was in various places. It was the School of Public Affairs and Administration. It was connecting it and getting faculty to understand we need to get this as a curriculum and get it through in a certain way. It is through programs like Educational Opportunity Fund, where the students come in the summer and then they have a commitment of that you got to, part of your responsibility is to give back. How do you know how to do that? How do we do that? Honors Living and Learning, and that's shaped in different spaces and places in different campuses and on different universities. Those that are going out to work and be a part of communities and people at nonprofit and communities, how to be a part of that, but also to change so that it's not just Newark Emergency Services just giving out, but how to make a change with that and be a part of that. And so for me, it is not, you have to look at your own structure. I think Tanya gave a lot of examples too that fit into the context. But then if you go to you might go to a small liberal college or university, they may say, well, we only could put it right here, or this is how we can put it online. We did multiple things. We have it online so that you can actually go as a student and take it and have an understanding. We're talking about seminar series. So once you take it, let's have discussions around it. Okay, let's talk about a class. So we follow you through with it and we actually see you implement some change somewhere and work with an organization so that then they may pick up on it. So there are different ways and different spaces, but I don't want the people out there to think that you just take the book and implement it that way. I think that is your tool, that is your guide, and Harry and his team is wonderful about helping you to assess where it fits in, how it fits in, and the different, I call it modes, or the different places and spaces that you can incorporate it in at your particular university.
Thank you.
I think I'm just going to echo what Diane and Tanya said and just start it off this way. It starts with a conversation, laying out the people in your institution to share the materials with, which is what I'm going to be the model of how we work with this. As the provost, my constituency is the faculty, and as an administrator, the faculty develop the curriculum. So from a curricular standpoint, embedding it, as Diane said, that is the role of the faculty. But as individuals that have an outreach, or an institution that has outreach, and institutions that go into the community, how do we empower those communities? And especially when we look at the Atlanta University Center complex. So it's not just Spelman, it's also Morehouse, it's also Clark Atlanta. Our colleagues and friends at Morris Brown are back at the gate. And so, but we have an Atlanta University kind of center where all the provosts sit. So it is starting with conversations. We have a very engaged and excellent group of colleagues in student affairs. So it gives me an opportunity to partner with my colleague, Daryl Holloman, in student affairs. And so it can be a campus-wide conversation, but this is never intended to start and end on your campus. It is about the citizenry and putting that in the mix. And so neighborhood association, listen, I'm going to be part of a neighborhood. And what is my homeowners association? How do we take this make it part of how we get results through our homeowners association. So I see opportunities the next time we have this conversation, and certainly as we roll this out, Harry, you can check my metrics to see if I met them all.
If I could just add to
Yeah,
that,
Harry, please.
I think Diana hit it right. There's no one size fits all or one place to start. The key is to get started and just plant the seed, and it'll grow from there. Look, we started at Rutgers Newark mostly because Raz Baraka, the mayor of Newark, is Mr. Empowerment, and he's a model for the nation, and he's embraced this. But we started by just having our book and our course used, the video course used within an existing course. And then Diana worked with our curriculum developer, and they're now building a full 4-credit course. And then the course got put on the continuing ed site, and then it got offered to the Newark's high school system. No high school student graduates from Newark without taking the video course right now. And then the corporations started to incorporate and use the Rutgers course for their employees. They offer it as a benefit, and they can get their Rutgers certificate at their option and put it in their personnel file. I could go on, but the idea is plant the seed, it will grow. This is the time to empower the people.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to, I'm going to kind of close this up, but I wanted to say a couple of things. One, I want to mention the website, training.thecitizenscampaign.org. And Giselle, if you can put that in the chat, please go there and you can get more information on the Citizens Campaign. I want to thank our amazing panel. Every time, I mean, when I am surrounded by this kind of intellect and also just excitement for what is possible, especially with young people, but across the board, it's so exciting. And I hope that everyone listening felt that way as well. I'm really excited about everything that I've heard today. Want to thank all of the panelists, also thank our attendees, and thanks to our team at the Rutgers Center for Minority Serving Institutions for sponsoring us and doing all the background work today. And just to let you know that we will send out a recording of this event to everyone who registered. And if you need any more information, once you get that email, feel free to reach out, and we would be happy to provide support in any way we can. Thank you, everyone.